All right. So maybe it's confusing because it says the. Make sure the chest here is visible. That's like really critical. Gonna chest completely. Right. I know it says the first session, and maybe I'm talking about this is the first session of the talking about DMing, but I actually mean the first session of your game. By the way, if you're watching this on the future Infinite Couch, hello. The Infinite Couch is of infinite size and time as well. So some people are in the past, some are in the future. All of them are enjoying. I want to shout out one of the greatest creations of all time, the system called Dungeon World. And what Dungeon World is a system I've actually been streaming a campaign of all this year so far. You can check it out on YouTube very easily. It's a free system. You can run Dungeon World in the chat, exclamation point, Dungeon World, and pull up a copy of it. Very simple. But mechanically it's very elegant, very brilliant, and it teaches you good principles that apply to any tabletop that you might do. And honestly, storytelling, writing in general. But we won't get into that. So in Dungeon World, the recommended flow for your first session is create your characters then. So I know, especially it's like more convenient if you make characters ahead of time, right? Especially if you're like old hat pros, but don't. Now, Dungeon World is great for this because it's very simple, but any tabletop system, you can make your fucking character right there. First session. Make it right then and there. Now let's stop. Why? My cat's snoring right here. He's not enthused by this talk. Anyway, the reason is you want to have the players riff off of each other while they're building their characters. This will also start to build aspects of your world, the relationships between the characters. You'll even pick up clues from their interaction. What type of game they want, right? So your first session, make the characters then. So that's the first chunk of your first session. Then do a scene. And by that I mean have some sort of encounter or situation that takes place in media res or in the middle of the shit. The shit is currently hitting the fan. Like an easy example is being attacked or robbed or mugged or Maybe the players are the cat or the crew of a ship and they're mutinying and taking it over on the run from the law. Like, there's a million things you can think of, right? But that should be your structure of your first session. Make the characters, no matter the system, together, and then play a scene. Now, what are you as the dungeon master trying to do your first session? What's the goal? You've got the form. You've got why the form is as it is. And why do a scene? That's pretty much obvious. You want something exciting to draw the characters in. Think about it like a television show, and your players are almost like viewers as well. In the case if you stream it like I do, that's also something you consider. So it's kind of cool. But in any case, you want the first episode, the pilot, essentially, to be action packed. Have hook them in, set the tone, kind of give you an idea of the theme, all these things. So if you pick a really good scene, you can kind of encapsulate that. Additionally, like I mentioned with the first part, it's another place where you can pick up clues as the dungeon master. We're going to talk about that now. So you got the form of your first session, no matter the system, make characters, have an action scene in media res. You know why? What is your goal as the dungeon master the first session? Again, this is non-system specific. If you want to learn more about this particular idea, I would encourage you to check out the game Dungeon World, which is free. But this applies to any system. What are you as the dungeon master up to in the first session? Well, a big part is you're listening for clues. Now, a lot of people that wind up being dungeon masters want to come in with this pretty intricately contrived story ahead of time, right? And that is definitely problematic if you're trying to run a game. The reason being, it's not about you at all. It's about your fucking players. Now, I know that sounds as much of a hippie as I look like. But I was just listening to Black Sabbath, so ease up. In any case, come up with a theme that you're excited to run. And of course, the system that you'd like to run. That's about it. Less is more when you're coming to your first session. An example, this really fun campaign I have going right now started with just the concept that I wanted to do a Viking-themed Dungeon World campaign. My chest hair is getting hidden. This when I pull out my chest hair as much as I can, this is my on-stream homage to Styx Hexenhammer. 666. Please go subscribe to him. He's a really good YouTuber. But the chest hair is all for Styx. I gotta really get it out for him, because sometimes he won't even have a shirt on. There we go. So again, you as the DM, less is more overall, but especially coming to the first session. So again, a theme, a system. In my case, Viking Dungeon World. Another example, one that I'll be running after this current game, will be Zombie Apocalypse World. Again, a world system. I've never tried Ritzy, but sometimes they're definitely, they find their way into my ass crack. You know what I mean? So I'll have like a couple hairs pinned between my butt cheeks. But it does come down to like my lower back. I'll probably be able to soon. Good looking out. Another example, theme zombies system, another world system, apocalypse world. That's what's gonna come out after we're done with this Viking one. But you see kind of the picture. You don't bring in like, oh, I have this plot and this dragon and don't do that. Just bring in a theme and then of course the system that you want to run. That's really it. So the reason being, your goal during the first session is you're like you're the CIA. Your first session, you're listening for everything. So remember, we're making characters this first session. Part of the structure, you definitely make your characters then. Don't pre-make them. Don't do any of this shit. And while your characters are rolling up their players, we'll go with that. First, it's fun, you know. People are gonna be like, "Oh, I rolled this, blah, fuck," you know, whatever. And then, as the selections they're making are already they're gonna be talking to each other, talking about their relationships, how their characters are intermingled even before you jump into the game. So it's very advantageous to actually make the characters in, and you're sitting there listening. You're gonna pick up clues to what they want to see in the game by how their characters are related. You're going to pick up clues to what they care about their characters, so shit that you can like develop, you know, like be the puppet master. Clues to what they want to experience in the game, ways they want to develop their character, all kinds of good shit. So pay attention while they're doing it. Just chill back, let them do their thing, you know, help them out, and then take some notes. Huge amount of notes. First session, you should have 8 billion notes. Once you're done with that character creation phase, remember we talked about you're going to do a short scene. And remember, this first session, don't make it heavy duty. There's a lot of things hitting the brain, so you're gonna need time to absorb. So I know you're excited, we're all excited, but don't make your session mad long. It's not gonna be beneficial. And by having a scene that you're in control of, a short, again, in the middle of the shit hitting the fan type of scene, you can control when to end. So you get it when the energy's high, everyone's having a good time. Make them want more, you know? Cut it when everything's getting good. And that's a good technique all the time, but we're talking the first session today. Talked about some examples of what that scene could be, but again, you as the dungeon master, what is your goal during that scene? And again, that's going to come back to you're the CIA. You're listening. Of course, at this point, you have to describe the scene and that sort of thing. And a good general note is, as the DM, you should be talking as little as possible. For the vast majority, try to encourage your players to be doing their thing, and you're there to describe or come in when the roles need it. And that's it. The less you talk, the better. It means your players are making it happen. But during this scene, you're again going to have an opportunity based on what the players do, the shit that they're interested in doing or care about, or places where maybe they don't totally get the rules, and you can kind of start to help them with that. By how they react to the scene you pick, you might learn shit that they're not interested in, and so you'd be like, all right, and you detour away from that for the remainder of the campaign. Trying to think of not basic shit that you would get here, because a lot of it's obvious, like what they like, what they don't like, what they get excited about their character doing. But the next level shit, you might even get clues in the scene to magic items or whatever, the treasure they're trying to get a hold of. You can see the picture. So you're a big detective throughout your first session as a dungeon master. I encourage you to structure it, make characters, then play a short scene. No matter what system you're doing, check out Dungeon World for a system I really like that has that built into it and kind of inspired that kind of concept. And that's about that. Definitely Zeus. That's more specific to Dungeon World. It actually in the book encourages that try to not have your players not to say their moves but describe what they're doing. I a little bit disagree in Dungeon World, especially when they're new, because it's a lot simpler when someone's learning the system to say let's say Dungeon World for instance, I want to hack and slash this. Because you can always say, all right, try describing that. Whereas as a new player, I feel like it's a lot trickier to make the other abstraction, which is I grab the orc's wrist, pin it against the shield of his line mate, and use my blade to chop off his hand, which would of course trigger a hack and slash. But I don't see a problem with someone saying I hack and slash his orc, and I'm like, could you describe that? And they're like, yeah, I grab his leg, I pull him up in a single so he falls on his ass, and then without even looking into his eyes, I take my blade and drive it down into his heart. Either way, it's fine with me. So I think that's a little bit nitpicky of the writers, in my opinion, but everybody has their own opinion. But it's a good point to bring up. During the first session, though, that's a good point to bring up because I would mention, especially like let's use Dungeon World as the example or whatever system, focus on getting the fundamentals down and trying to help people understand the rules, and less on like expecting too much. It's a lot better, in my opinion, to keep things simple, focus on the rules if the players are new to the rules. And most people, even if they're not, they need a little help. And instead, be like, they'll be afraid to say, all right, that's how it works mechanically. Now let's describe it. Because then what you'll do is build an understanding of, okay, I'll just describe what's going on, and then in the back of their head, they're thinking about the mechanics, So almost like, since you play my Dungeon World game, how once we get into the flow, everyone kind of naturally describes what they're doing, knowing, and it's almost a metagame back and forth in their mind, how to describe it to trigger the move, Because in their mind, they're like, I want to do this move, how can I describe it? So I don't see any problem with just saying that, It's always seemed to me like a weird artificial, but I'm not like trying to hate on it. I just think I disagree. I don't think it matters. Because, yeah, like you say, it's so hard in general that as long as someone gets it right, I don't care about the order so much. Alright. I think we're good on that. So I'll switch sections here, tweet it out, and then it's Battlegrounds time. Hopefully you'll continue hanging out and enjoy a little bit of time here on the Infinite Couch.